beneficial because the mission of our organization is to help people come together, go solar together, but then join together after that and fight for our energy rights, because it does take a lot of effort on every level of government, on every level of the community, in order to make solar viable and possible. And certainly it'll take everyone here helping us to continue to fight for people's right to add solar and to be off grid if they really want to be, to make the decision about where their energy is coming from at the end of the day. So our organization, again, we're Solar United Neighbors. We're all over the country. We're in 12 different states. We mainly do are these solar co-ops. We pull people together. They're like buying clubs for solar, rooftop solar. Got over 100,000 supporters so far. We've helped just about 5,000 people at this point go solar through these co-ops. And we're really excited to, again, be launching 4 of them here today. So without too much further ado, we will jump right into the presentation. It'll be broken into 3 parts, and we'll go through it in about 45 minutes, and maybe a little less, so that we'll have some time for questions at the end. First, we'll go through the solar and EV technology portion. Again, we've included EV chargers as part of the solar co-op, which is a great opportunity for people to not only go solar, but also add some components like an EV charger to that system that will allow them to charge their car off the sun, which is fantastic. And we also want to provide people information. If you're thinking about going solar, odds are we've found that you're probably also thinking about electric vehicles and other types of technology to help you become more sustainable. We want to give you a little more information about how you might get connected with an EV group around here, or some information about purchasing an EV. Also, we'll talk about solar, economics of solar, both macro and micro, what it means to your pocketbook and what it means on a larger scale. And then of course, the co-op and how that works. Right. So, part 1, solar. What are we talking about, right? There's several types of solar. You might have heard of passive solar or water heating solar, solar windows. What we're focusing on is photovoltaic solar. That's the energy that the sun produces photons. It hits our solar panels and it produces electricity that is then able to power your house and go back out to the grid. That's the kind of power we are focusing on, not the other types of solar power, just so you know. There's several components that go into making a system work, and they start with rooftop, which is the panels that go on your roof that collect the sunlight, that are then funneled into an inverter. Either the inverter's on the roof, where it's going to be on the side of your house, your garage, your basement, your panel, and then your electrical panel, electrical box, which will then push that energy out to the grid, or will then push it out to your outlets and things for you to use, right? So that's the basic flow of a grid-tied system. There's also off-grid systems, but we're going to be focusing mainly on grid-tied. Talk a little bit about battery storage as well. So starting from the rooftop down, we're talking about the panels. Panels are, or solar modules, as they're also called, are collections of solar cells, which are even smaller, just square wafers of silicon that collect that light, convert it directly into direct energy, direct current electrons. All right, those are all strung together, and they're sandwiched between 2 sheets of tempered glass and encapsulated in a polymer type, just a plastic coating that allows them to be waterproof and safe between those 2 sheets of glass. And then it's encased all the way around with usually an anodized aluminum frame, okay? And on the back of that is going to be a piece of metal that makes the whole thing very rigid, or a piece of glass on the back. The whole panel itself, one panel is the size of an American flag. It's 3 feet by 5 feet. Each panel weighs 50 pounds, maybe a little less, maybe a tiny bit more, but usually 50 pounds or less. There's also a little junction box in the back so that those panels can be easily snapped together with some wires that can be hooked together either in parallel or in series, depending on how your system is set up. So that's the most basic component of a solar system. After that, if you put a bunch of those solar panels together, you get an array. So you connect a bunch of those panels, you get an array, and that solar array is then what goes on your roof and produces electricity. It's important that we understand what these are, some terminology about how we talk about solar. The most important distinction that we really need to think about is kilowatts versus kilowatt hours. Okay, so kilowatts are the size or the power rating of a system. Just like we have our electronics that are rated. I have a 65-watt charger plugged into my computer here, or I have a 100-watt light bulb or a 6-watt LED light bulb. Systems are equally, they're rated. And a panel might be rated at 300 or 400 watts. For the sake of this example, let's look at our Shadow Man example over here. We have a solar array of 12 panels, and each panel might be rated at 300 watts. So this would be a 3 kilowatt size system. right here standing next to that guy, okay? Now, a system like this, over the course of time, would produce energy. So kilowatts over time, or kilowatt hours, is a rating of energy or storage. So it's the amount of energy you're actually producing over time. So a system like this, if it was sat on the sun for 1 hour, at the middle of the day, peak hours, you're actually producing 3.6 kilowatt hours of energy. There's some efficiency loss as it makes it towards your outlets, but that's kind of a rough hypothetical there for you, just to give you a sense. So it's rated in kilowatts. A system produces kilowatt hours. Most systems are sized between 2 and 12. That's the average that we do here in Ohio. We've done over 350 installs through the co-op program in Ohio, and of those 350, they were right in that range. The smallest one's around 2, and the biggest one's actually around 20, but they fall closer to 2 to 12 kilowatts. And it generally covers people's electricity bills from 20 to 80% of their energy, right? That's how much a system covers. Legally, you're allowed to go up to 120% of your energy production, so you can overproduce by 20% of what you use during the year with the solar system and still get net metering, like what Mike talked about. We're going to talk about net metering here in a minute too, but that's usually what people are doing. You're going to want to size the system to be cover your energy need as much as you want and as much as your budget will allow. That's generally the rule of thumb. When an installer works with you, they're going to look at your utility bills to see how much you use over the last year. They're going to size your system to be, maybe you want to do 80%, maybe you want to do 50% of your energy bill. They'll work with you on that. Some more things that need to be in place for a system to be working and efficient and effective. A great racking system is important. Also, what's on the racking system here is important. A qualified roofer and installer, electricians to help install that so that you're not going to have any problems down the road. Also very important. So panels are then hooked together. First, you need optimizers on the back of every panel. So that junction box, into that junction box in the panel goes an optimizer. That optimizer allows each panel to kind of be operated individually or to be viewed individually. So if you have a problem with one panel, you can pull an app up on your phone. You can see the optimizer lets you, get to that granular detail. Those optimizers are then all hooked together and funneled into an inverter. This is also called a string inverter that would be in your basement, garage, somewhere dry and safe, that would then convert that power or convert that energy into from direct to alternating current. All right. There's another option. Instead of doing the optimizer plus the inverter, some places are using the microinverters, becoming more popular. Half dozen of one, six of the other, in my opinion. Some people swear by optimizers and inverters. Others swear by microinverters. Microinverter will convert that DC to AC energy on your roof, and that wire comes down off of your roof and straight into your electrical box. So those are the two options that are most prevalent. So systems can go on any type of roof. This is a shake roof. They can go on slate, they can go on asphalt. Just depends on the type of equipment that's used matters, right? So there's different ways of connecting different systems to different roofs. Flashing, which is great. I mean, this is what's on my roof. In fact, this picture here is actually my roof. That's somebody installing the system on my particular roof, which is great. So flashing actually goes under the shingle on top of it so that the penetration is all underneath this piece of shingle so that it rarely leaks. In fact, there's 9 times out of 10, and I can almost guarantee that the installer that this group's going to select once we get to that section of the co-op will pick an installer that guarantees their roof work for a certain period of time so that if there is a leak, that they'll come out and fix it, or they're responsible at the end of the day. Ballasted systems are weighted down, no penetrations in the roof. It's also standoff beams, running beams across spans that can't support the weight. Clamps, so if you have a standing seam roof, you could do clamps. There's a lot of different ways to attach solar systems to roofs. Here's a ballasted system, for instance, what it looks like. Again, just weighted down, no roof penetration. Usually for flat roofs or very limited pitch roofs, extremely limited pitch roofs. And then also ground mounts. Ground mounts are prevalent, particularly in more rural areas or areas of space. Maybe your roof's a little old. Maybe you don't want to put anything on your roof. Maybe you want to have a little bit more of that 30 to 40 degree pitch that is a little bit better for capturing sunlight. So a lot of people opt for ground mounts, and the price is comparable. Maybe it's a few cents more to do a ground mount. Price is very comparable there. So another roofing consideration is which direction and tilt of your roof, or the angle and azimuth of your roof is really important. South facing is always best. South facing 30 or 40 degrees. is prime. 25 degrees is great. 15, you're still getting plenty of production. A flat roof, you're seeing a 15% degradation or 15% efficiency loss over a roof that's facing 30 degrees south, for instance, which would be 100%. Same thing with east or west facing roofs. My solar array, my 6.1 kilowatt size solar array, is facing on both east and west sides of my roof, and it works fine. But it would be producing more if it were facing south. So it's not a deal killer to be any of these directions. North doesn't work. North doesn't work at the 42nd parallel, right? Or 41st or wherever we're at. We're pretty far up. So that's the only direction that's not good. Shading. We highly encourage people, if you're interested and you're a little bit worried about trees close to your house or a building nearby, or to sign up for the co-op. Part of what we do, part of our job, is to do a roof review. Actually, Eric, who's on this call, does the reviews for all of our co-ops. He goes in, he pulls it up in PV Watt or a system that is able to analyze whether there's going to be shading issues, and then is able to pre-qualify or disqualify or maybe qualify the roof. So he does that work for us, and you get an email that says, hey, your roof seems qualified. But then the installer ultimately comes out and makes that final determination. So space on a roof, you want to make sure there's enough space to fit the amount of solar you're going to need to make your need. Remember, if you have a smaller roof or an older roof, conditions also be important. To have a roof that's got at least 10 to 15 years, even better, more life left on it. But if you don't have the space, you can always do a ground mount, or the roof's not in good enough shape, you can always do a ground mount system if you have the space. So those are some options. Again, you want 10 to 15 years on the roof. It's possible people do, if they have close to 10, maybe a little less life left on the roof, they might install a solar system to capture the 10 years of good roof life energy. But then after that period of time, you can pay the installer to come back out for anywhere between $500 and $2,000, depending on the size of the system and the installer. They'll remove that system and they'll put it back on the roof for you once your roof's replaced. So that is an option. It just adds to the cost, and you should be aware of that. Panel. So once that, like we said, once that comes off of your roof, goes through that inverter, the electricity, it's going to go into your panel. Most panels are pretty up to spec. Either it's 100 amp or 200 amp. Obviously, they love 200 amp more than the 100 amp panels. Mine's 100 amps. Actually, I didn't have enough room in my panel. It's a small panel in my old Century home here in Lakewood. But they were able to swap out a couple of my breakers, and they were able to squeeze another 2 breakers in there to get another 30. I think there's a 30 amp breaker in to do the solar. And they didn't, they won't charge you for small things like that, or they shouldn't charge you for small, because that's part of the deal. Right? Part of the deal is they're going to hook this up to your electrical box and swap things around and make it work. So most times things are fine. If for some reason your electrical box would not pass an inspection, that's going to be an issue, because there's going to be a city inspection of your electrical system with the new solar installed. So your installer won't work with a system that's out of spec, or will require you to either find somebody to replace your box, or they'll offer to replace your box if it is indeed out of code. But that would be the only, I think, time they would have to replace a box. Rare. All right, so what have we talked about? I put grid tied up here, more so to remind me that we're really talking about grid tied systems right now. So array, inverter, electrical panel, utility meter. So this is where we talk about net metering a little bit. So net metering is actually, allows for the electrons to flow to and from the customer, right? This is also where state law is really important. Some states don't have net metering. Net metering means that you're getting a full credit for everything you're putting back on the grid. So let's say during the day, it's sunny, it's really sunny outside. You can put a lot of energy. In fact, here, this is my meter before they swapped it out for a smart meter. My solar system was going pretty strong, and I decided to take a little video clip. That's my meter running backwards pretty fast. I was putting about 4 kilowatts onto the grid at that moment. Not much was running in my house. It's around noon. Racking up the credit on and then at night, obviously there's no sun. That meter's going to start spinning the other direction. And at the end of the month, you're only billed for the amount of electricity you use. And then if you overproduce, that extra energy you've overproduced that month will go on to into a credit sort of bank. In fact, let's look and see what that looks like here in our next slide. Here we go. So you'll see here over the course of a year, maybe during January, February, November, December, even October, you are not producing enough electricity to totally offset your need. But during the warmer months, the months the sun's out here in Ohio particularly, you're far overproducing your need. So the whole deal is this is going to average out. And this is what it looks like when it does. So we'll pick a month, we'll pick August to look at. During August, this individual, used 891 kilowatt hours, all right? But they produced 1,100, so they overproduced by a couple hundred kilowatts. And you can see they have $1,900 credit kilowatt hours banked, and they added a couple hundred up to 2,128 that month. So these 2,128, they're going to be used through the winter months. All these winter months, they're going to draw down on that 2,000 credit kilowatt hours. And by the time they get to May, June, they'll be adding to that bank again. And then it trues up in the middle of every summer. Right at the end of June, it trues up according to law. Now, I should make a really important note here that this applies to investor-owned utility territory in Cleveland Public Power, who has adopted the same net metering rules. And these net metering rules are set by the states. The state legislature put this into effect. Mike Skindle helped put this into effect back in 2008 when they did the RPS, the Renewable Energy Portfolio. So thanks to that bill, we have this law that helps those folks. However, if you live in a rural cooperative, or you live in a municipally owned utility company, you may have a different set of rules that apply, where you may not get that full value, that full credit for solar. And that's going to depend on which one of the 23 rurals you live in, or which one of the 30 or so small mini electric companies that you're subscribed to. So what happens when the grid goes down? This is a pretty big question. When the grid goes down, the solar system has to turn off. If it's just a solar system, my solar system is required to shut down when the grid goes down. Reason? You can't be putting electricity back onto the grid when the grid's down, because there's probably a problem with the grid, and there's probably someone out there working, and they would be electrocuted, or there's a chance they could be electrocuted if we were putting power. So it's pretty important not to shock our line workers at the end of the day. But the way you kind of get around that is you can buy a battery battery backup system, which would then, instead of shutting down your system, would isolate your system. There's also special inverters that have some capacitors and batteries built into them that will allow your system to be isolated from the grid and stay up and keep your house running while the grid is down. So basically it allows your battery to work as a generator, or it can even work in conjunction with the generator, right? So solar's coming down off the roof, it's being converted, it's going through a subpanel, which is then also hooked to a generator and or a battery. The battery then, say the power goes out, the main panel shunts over to the essential loads in the subpanel, and you're pulling straight off the battery. Pretty smooth transition between battery, especially with these newer things like the Tesla Powerwall. Very fast transition from the grid to over to the battery backup. So that's an option. People often do batteries. There's multiple reasons why you do a battery. One of the biggest reasons is utility outages, or being somewhere rural where you don't have access to steady power, or you absolutely need pumps, medical equipment running, so you have to have a battery or a generator. A battery might replace a generator in that case. Emergency disaster preparedness, just peace of mind, having a battery backup. Time of use is coming here to Ohio. It'll be here before too long. I know that this means that at night, or when there's higher demand for power, your cost goes up. The price per kilowatt, the utilities charge you more for the power during peak hours. But if you had a battery, you could bank some of that cheap power either from the nighttime grid or from your solar system, and you can use it during the more expensive hours of the day, thus cutting your utility bill by just shifting where you're using power with your battery. So that's an option and a reason why people do it. More so in like California and other places where energy is really expensive. There are disadvantages. Batteries aren't free. They can be costly. It could cost $9,000 to do a 9 kilowatt or 6 kilowatt hour sized battery. There is some maintenance. Batteries are usually warranted for 7 or 10 years, but there may be some maintenance. Certainly not as much maintenance, or certainly a lot less maintenance than a generator. So it's sort of relative how much maintenance. And they're somewhat complex. I'd say generators are far more complex as there's many more moving parts, but really depends on what you're trying to do, right? And that's exactly what this next slide's about. What are you trying to do? If you set up a sub panel, you're going to want to make some decisions about what you want to power and for how long. So you might want to make some choices. Maybe you're going to want to power your lights, fridge, and water pump, medical equipment, but maybe not so much the AC, dryer, and dishwasher. The reason this is really important, it affects the price greatly, right? So you can actually power your whole house, no problem. You don't need a sub panel if you want to buy 3 Tesla Powerwalls, right? If you really want to go all out on batteries. But if you really want to just have the essentials up and running, have that battery backup for emergencies, then you're going to want to find a different way to do it and create a sub panel so you don't have to spend a ton of money on batteries, right? So that's more of a cost saving mechanism and a decision you'll have to make if you decide to get batteries. And there's some options out there. You can do lead acid still. People do sell lead acid batteries. They're sealed lead acid batteries, so you don't need to add water, and they're less dangerous, don't need to be ventilated usually. You can also do the more industry standard thing, the lithium ion. Again, Tesla Powerwall is probably just one of the most well-known names. Don't mean to be repping them too much. I should probably think of more pictures and things to use so that it doesn't seem that way. But they're a good product and definitely an industry leader in lithium ion. Some things to think about: insurance, local permitting, making sure that your city is aware you're installing batteries, so that you can follow the rules about where they should be and shouldn't be. Utility requirements, not such a big deal because we're on the other side we're on the back side of the meter, so utilities aren't too involved in battery stuff right now, regulating batteries or anything like that. Installer qualifications, obviously you want installers installed batteries before, and equipment availability, retrofitting. You can also get batteries after you get a solar system, right? It's always best if you do it with some forethought, so you can figure out where you're going to put them and how they're going to hook up to your system. But even if you have a solar system and you didn't think about it, you can still go back and get a battery backup system later on. And right now, with a 26% federal tax credit, if batteries are fed from a solar system, then you can get that 26% tax credit on that system. So that's batteries. If you have more questions, go to solarunitedneighbors.org, solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. You can find tons of great info on depth on batteries there. We'd love for you to check that out. Another thing we're talking about is the charger. So we want to get this information out there because when you install a solar system, it's also a great time, especially if you have a EV, to do the solar and EV charger. There's several options out there for combination inverters, EV chargers. Some other things you want to think about is charging off the sun is a great option. You get about 10 to 30 miles per hour out of a charge. Out of a level 2 charger, that's a 240 volt charger. These systems are typically warranted for 3 years. There's all kinds of networked abilities, so you can actually monitor and set when your car is charging to be charging directly from the sun when possible, and then maybe not charging so much. Or, as time of use comes into play, being able to set when your car charges, whether it's from the sun or from lower cost nighttime energy, is important. So it's some considerations. There's public chargers out there too. We're proud here in Lakewood. We have several public free car chargers. They're becoming more prevalent. More cities are doing them. More companies are doing them. Residential, of course, that's really what we're here discussing, is making sure that you're aware that now is a good time when you're thinking get your solar system done. If you're an EV owner or going to be an EV owner soon, get that either a 220 plug installed like this guy has done here, or even just go ahead and get the EV charger, which will be offered within the co-op selections. Installation considerations. This is fairly straightforward. I think you can pick a place to do it outside. You can even get some rebates if you put it outside and offer your charger, your private charger, to the public. Like we said, the Solar Edge inverter charger combo is an option. Want to make sure people know about that. And you can always do wall mount or a pedestal mount. There's a lot of varieties. Make sure you have enough cord, right, when you do a solar install. If you're going to do a solar install, you might want to make a choice, if you're going to do the EV inverter / EV charger, to put that inverter somewhere where you know that it's going to be able to reach the plug of your car eventually, right? And every car is a little bit different where the plugs are. If you're thinking of getting a Leaf versus a car that has a side plug, you want to make sure you put that inverter / charger somewhere important now, so you don't have to pay money to move it later. Good things to think about. Cost-wise, chargers can be anywhere from $500 to $700. Plus install, look anywhere between $1,000 and $2,700, somewhere in that range. I think that's fair. And if you're thinking about buying an EV, now's not a bad time. They still have the $7,500 incentive from the federal government for the EVs. For a plug-in hybrids is less. It could be anywhere from $1,000 up to $7,500. If you're trying to make a decision between a plug-in hybrid and EV, I'm actually a plug-in hybrid owner myself. I have a Ford C-Max. They get about 20, mine gets 20, some get closer to 50 miles of range on a charge, but then they also have a gasoline engine, the hybrid versions do. So you can plug them in, charge them, run on electric, and when that dies, then you can run on your gas engine. But EV technology has gotten a lot better. You have EVs that can go 400 plus miles, some of the nicer, more extended life, extended range battery EVs. So range anxiety is becoming less of a thing, but it is a thing. And I'll start at the bottom of the slide here, because we're talking about it. A better route planner is out there. You can actually go online and plan your routes if you're going to do a long trip. But I've been talking to some of these EV owners through the work we're doing with the co-op, and 99% of the time, they never have to think about anything as far as range goes, worrying about how far to go, when to go, because rarely during the course of a day do you travel more than 200 miles, right? But if you're making a trip, you're obviously thinking about it and planning it ahead a little bit. So range anxiety isn't a thing, I don't think, once you own an EV. It's a thing when you're thinking about buying one, but once you're actually in that lifestyle, it's certainly less of a thing. There's no oil changes, fewer brake jobs, fewer moving parts, less maintenance. This is the way things are going. The big automakers are getting into it now. So definitely the way things are going. So good question. In fact, that's a perfect segue into the economics. And we'll go ahead and jump right into it. I'll start with this slide, since this answers James's question, I think, fairly well. How the industry does this is by watt. So if you want to look at a 300 watt system, right now our co-ops, they're a little bit more than, prices have gone up a little bit because of some trade wars and such. So we're at about $2.50 per watt installed. That's the co-op average. You can see here the average is where they've come from. Back in 2010, it cost about $6.50 per watt installed. Has come down to about $3 is about the standard. So as you're out there, if you're out there getting quotes, and we highly recommend you get other quotes, even if you join the co-op and get a quote through the co-op proposal, get another quote from another company. You should be making sure that they're staying around that average. This is national average of around $3 a watt, and Ohio's pretty close to that national average, about $3 per watt. So per panel, if you can also Google and find what it costs per panel if you want to do panels on your own. But these costs also include what the inverter plus the labor plus the racking system plus the permitting work, as well as any kind of design work they have to submit to the county or to the city, depending on your municipality or county. So panels can cost anywhere from a few $100s all the way up to $500 a panel, depending on if they're high efficiency, if they're cheaper 250 watt panels, or super high efficiency LG Neo 450 watt panels. It really varies. And in the co-op, there'll be two offerings. You'll get an offering that's a standard panel. It's kind of industry standard, 300 watt-ish size panel. And you'll also get a upgrade option for those that don't have enough space. Maybe they need a higher efficiency panel in order to get more energy in a smaller square footage space. Those panels are obviously more expensive, and they're usually like the Neos that are 450 watts. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit. And we'll talk a little bit more about pricing here as we go. Again, it kind of goes to one of the other questions that was asked. The tax credit, the federal tax credit, they're still offering it. It used to be 30%. In 2019, there's 30%. So if you spent $19,250, about $20,000 on a system, you'd get a non-funded refundable tax credit the next year for $5,700. So as long as you spent at least that much on tax, as long as you had some taxable income, you'd get that much of an actual tax credit. It could be spread out too. So if you don't pay $5,000 in taxes in a given year to be offset, then it could be spread out over that one-time tax credit. Could be taken over 5 years. So this year it's gone down to 26%. My system was installed a few months ago, so I'm getting a 26% tax credit. About what was it? About $4,000, $4,500 next tax season. And in fact, probably have to take it over 2 years. Next year, 2021, it drops down to 22%, and then there's a cliff. It goes down to 0, so you'll be paying full price in 2022. That's the subsidy. That's the tax credit. That's really driving what we're seeing in Ohio right now. It's part of what's driving it. I mean, the cost is coming down. Popularity of solar is going up. So here you see in 2016, solar was far less than 5 megawatts installed a year. We're now way over 10. This is residential, the dark blue. Well over 10 megawatts being installed every year, and we're over 5,000 installs according to the Public Utility Commission. So SIA, which published information from the Public Utility Commission here in Ohio. So it's definitely on the upward trend, and these two slides are why, right? Prices have come down, they're still a subsidy. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, let's take some average here. 4 kilowatt size system, which is a smaller size system, or an 8 kilowatt size system, which is around the average, a little bit over average. Oversized system, a 12 kilowatt size system for a bigger house, bigger family maybe. So here's the prices: $2.52, which was around the average end of last year for the co-ops here in Ohio. You're looking at $10,000, $20,000, and $30,000 for systems out the door, gross. You're getting $2,600, $5,200, and $7,800 back in your tax credits the next year. So the net cost of those systems were there: $715,000, and $22,000 net cost for those individual systems, which means right now you're breaking even right about the middle point of the 11th year on these systems. That's where you're actually saving enough money to pay off the system around the 11th and a half year. And then over the life of the system, a question that often comes up is, what is our systems guaranteed? How long do they operate? Well, most panels are either 25 or 30-year warranted life to produce X amount of energy, usually 90% of the energy at the end of that 30-year period of time. So we assume that, to be a little bit conservative, the life of the system is 25 years. We know it's going to last longer than that, but we'll say it's 25 years. So that after that period of time, let's say you have that 8 kilowatt size system, looking at a return of $36,000 just in savings, which means you're profiting in some way, around $20,000 from it. So the economics work over the long haul, right? Of course, it's quite a lift in the beginning. You know, it's expensive, but there's also ways to pay for it. We want to hook you up and make sure that you're aware of the EqualLink loan, which is a home equity loan. It's a HELOC loan, but it's subsidized through the state government at least 1%. I think you can still qualify for more than the 1%, but at least 1% right now. And that means you can, if you qualify through your bank for a 3-4% home equity loan, you've used the EqualLink program, then they'll subsidize at least 1% of that home equity loan, which is quite a bit of money over time. If you live in Cuyahoga County, for that Cuyahoga County help program, I misspelled loan. So if you live in this county, you can take advantage of the help loan, which is a solid 3% of your subsidy on the home equity loans. So that's a pretty good deal. Our PACE, we're not going to worry too much about that now. It's not online yet. That's residential property assessed clean energy tax. You pretty much put your solar installation on your property tax bill and pay a very low interest rate loan as if it were on your taxes. That's not a program yet. It's rolling out in Bexley, Ohio. I think there's a couple small places around the state that are rolling out our PACE, but individual municipalities have to pass that and get that rolling, and they're done through the cities. So that's coming this year. We'll see some of those roll on, and as they come online, we'll let you know if those become options in your territory. There's also some things you want to think about. It does create an opportunity to, you don't want to increase your tax burden too much. You're kind of putting your house up sort of as collateral on that, right? To have a tax lien on your house can be a big deal. So we want to make sure that cities are operating correctly and putting these programs into place appropriately with appropriate protections too. So we'll be communicating more about that as we go. Traditional home equity, installers also offer financing, usually around 6%, 7%. Do not, please ignore the Facebook ads, $0 out of pocket for solar. Don't, never pay for solar, or let the sun pay your utility bill. You see these things online, maybe on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube even. Be very, very careful. There's some very fishy financial mechanisms they use, which include balloon payments after so many months. But then they also usually you have to sign over your tax, non-refundable tax credit to the company at some point as the deferred down payment. They say there's no down payment, but a lot of times there is. There's just a deferred down payment. So you got to be really careful when you're looking at those companies. Those are not the companies that bid on our co-ops because they don't want to compete on that level. And they also, so the companies that bid are generally better companies. Cash is an option. And remember, you do have that non-refundable tax credit.
Okay.
And actually, these groups, so you'll get to decide what installer you pick. We'll do something called a selection committee where the co-op members actually will all get on a Zoom call more than likely. Usually we meet together, but lately it's been Zoom calls, COVID. And we'll actually all get to decide what installer that we want to go with. And oftentimes the co-op members don't pick the lowest bid. They end up picking an installer that's been around a little bit longer, that offers the right battery package, that offers the right EV charger package, which means that we don't end up going with the dirt cheap. So it's just, which is encouraging, and people actually do want quality, and that's what comes out of these bids most often, which, you know, can be $2.50, it could be $2.60 per watt, it might be $2.40 or $2.30, you don't know.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, we're very open, like I'm talking. I'm very open and transparent about, you know, what's going on in the process. We feel like the more people that have the more information, the better that these processes go. The more installers are paying attention and listening, you know, the more competitive they'll be in the end of the day, which is great. We want to encourage that. So I want to take a brief second to thank our partners. You know, without a lot of nonprofits, a lot of governments and things, and just groups of really passionate individuals around the state, around the country for our organization, but for us particularly around the state. Power Clean Future Ohio is just a great group of nonprofits that have got together and decided to really push cities to be more energy efficient and reduce their carbon emissions across the state. It's getting a lot of steam. Really happy and proud to have their support as one of those ways to help cities help their residents become more energy efficient. So thank you for Power Clean Future. And Ohio Environmental Council has been around for 50 years, great group, fighting for you know, energy justice for many years and keeping us all moving in the right direction. Drive Electric Ohio, I mentioned it a few times, has been great. Cuyahoga County supports our work in Cuyahoga County specifically, obviously, and they've been great. As with Citizen Climate Lobby and Drive Electric, all the Drive Electric groups have been phenomenal at getting the word out, and really thank you for your participation. We've got a couple more questions here. Can you explain a little bit more about how the co-op works? Yes, we're going to get to that in just a second. How should we ask our installer to also install an EV charger system, or is that beyond the pricing scope? Great, excellent question. Does Solar United Neighbors have a relationship with green energy? We sure do. And we're going to have an even closer relationship coming next year. And I got some cool stuff to announce. Jane and I have been talking about how we might partner on some EV / solar tour things for next year. So yeah, great group. Very, very happy to have a very productive, fruitful partnership with them. So going back to Michelle's question, explain a little bit about how the co-op works, and thank you for reeling me in. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been putting together the co-op. Today we officially launch. Today you're able to go online and sign up. We opened it a little bit early, so some people signed up early, which is great. You go on, you sign up. Once we get to go about 30 participants, this is around month 2, 3, somewhere in there. We might actually be on a little bit accelerated time frame here. We get to 30 participants, then we issue that RFP to all the installers, and then we pull together that selection committee. And as you sign up to be a co-op member, you know, you're going to get a notification like, hey, do you want to be on the selection committee? I'll send you an email. We'll connect. It can be as many people as many co-op members as want to participate can participate in that, and you can help select the installer. You don't have to, but you can. Then once you pick the installer, as soon as that installer is selected, they're going to get a list of all the co-op members at that point, and they're going to start reaching out like the next day after we select that installer, or maybe the next week, to start getting you guys proposals, start working with you, and start getting you in the pipeline. It takes a couple of weeks from the point that they contact you to where you get to where you're actually scheduled for solar, maybe even a week if it's really fast, and then it'll take a few weeks beyond that to get the solar installed on your roof. So yes, you're looking at towards August for that install. It could be in August. The install could begin before the co-op deadline passes. That's not out of the realm of possibility, but most likely it'll happen towards the end of August, going into September. By the end of September, everybody who wanted to sign the contract should have signed the contract, and installation should be well underway in September. So that's the timeline. A little bit about how that how the co-op works. There's no fee to join. The only time that you are going to make any kind of commitment is when you sign on the dotted line with the installer directly. And you're going to get one quote from one installer that the selection committee sought, right? That they actually were able to secure. I heard that Tesla is developing shingles, panels. Are they available? Not here, at least not that I've heard of. There's no certified installer in the state of Ohio that I heard of. Maybe they, I know they just came out with the version 3, which looks pretty cool. But there was an installer in Buffalo, but then I heard that they were not installing anymore, and the prices are much more expensive than they're replacing your roof and the solar, so they're in the range of double to the price of what a solar install would cost through more traditional means, at least double. But if you're replacing your roof and doing the solar install, it becomes a little more economical. Yeah, Enphase, and I've heard of Enphase is very popular. SunSource pair, Enphase and Lennox SunSource pair. Not heard of that specifically, but I know Enphase is one of the most popular brands of inverter. Tesla panels are super pricey. Yes. Yep. The version 3s are really cool, though. I have to admit, it's really cool technology. I just wish it were more accessible. Great question. If my county's not listed, am I able to join the co-op? You can still go and sign up on our list. In fact, Eric, what's the process for getting people signed up to a wait list or to membership, which is free right now, right? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah. So if you go to our website, solarunitedneighbors.org, at the top of the screen, you will see an option to join different membership options. So you can look for the individual membership. Essentially what that means is we will help you go solar on your own. So we can recommend some places where you can look for installers and kind of how to get in touch with them. And we will help you review up to 3 different proposals. So we will kind of put all of those proposals together in a little spreadsheet that makes everything easy to compare, so you can kind of easily tell the differences and make the best choice for your home.
Yep. Thank you, Eric. That's great. solarunitedneighbors.org/Ohio. And you can also do it on the phone, and you'll see there's all the co-ops listed that we have got going on. And you can also join as a member.